Jack Hebert lived upstairs in House 2B. It was a room measuring 16 by 16, large enough for his needs. A beige carpet measuring 12 by 16 covered the entire length of the room, but ended 4 feet short of the small kitchen. There, the owner had laid down some pretty good linoleum. The linoleum extended into the small bathroom. In the small bathroom, Jack laid down a simple rug that took up almost all the available space. But that was enough for him. He didn't need much. He didn't want much. Jack Herbert definitely didn't need the 200 square foot house his wife insisted on buying. At first, he objected. It was just him, her, and their 16-year-old daughter, and they simply didn't need that much space. Especially since Deirdre would undoubtedly have to leave in 2 years. Ever since she saw a photo of the college campus, the girl had talked about nothing but going to Florida State University. But Jack, as usual, gave in and made the 25% down payment, $52,500. Then, 2 years after Deirdre moved out, Jacqueline began bombarding him with the usual phrases. We've grown apart. It's not you, it's me. And this will help us rebuild our relationship. He was baffled as to how a 47-year-old woman who had taken a lover 32 years her junior could help them rebuild their relationship. But, to Jacqueline's surprise, this time Jack didn't give in. He didn't just give in. You'll be left with nothing, she shouted, her usually beautiful face contorted into an ugly grimace when he told her he was leaving. Fine, at least I won't be living with a wrinkled old whore, he said and finished packing his suitcase. He had bought the equipment from Miller Electronics. It wasn't difficult to hide it in the big house. Jacqueline wasn't known for being particularly thorough in her housekeeping, and she didn't pay much attention to what was going on around her. He found out that Jacqueline's lover was a teacher at Baylor Lake High School. That's how they met. Brian taught English, and Jacqueline was a librarian. Jacqueline and Brian decided that Jack should just agree to their plan. They would have an affair, and then Brian would return to his wife and Jacqueline to her husband. But Jack Hebert did not become the chief accountant at St. Elizabeth's Community Services because of carelessness. He became chief accountant thanks to his accuracy and thoroughness. As agreed, Brian and Jacqueline went to Sweet Pea Restaurant for a dinner of fried catfish. Brian's parents were sitting there. Embarrassed, Brian introduced Jacqueline as his colleague. Where's Michelle? Brian's mother asked sternly. She's at home with the girls, Brian stammered. Yes, she told us, his father replied sharply. She said you had a parent-teacher conference at school today or something like that. Yes, but there was a change of plans and we decided to grab a bite to eat, Brian replied, stammering. Uh-huh, said both of Brian's parents, letting him know they didn't believe his unconvincing excuse. After a silent dinner, the couple, who were no longer so much in love, went to Foxtrot's lounge to dance. Jacqueline loved to dance, but Jack didn't really like it. He had 2 left feet. Jacqueline's mother and stepfather were dancing at Foxtrot's. Yes, dear. Your husband slipped Roger a couple of $100 and told him to bring me here to dance and have a drink, her mother giggled. Then she looked at Brian and raised an eyebrow. What are you doing here? She asked her daughter. Well, Jack doesn't really like dancing, so, Jacqueline stammered. Come on, Monique, they're playing our song, Roger insisted. That's not our song, you silly old goat, Monique laughed, but allowed herself to be dragged back onto the dance floor. But Jacqueline was determined to continue their romance, if only to show her husband that he wasn't going to ruin her evening. Brian didn't mind. Dancing and dinner were just a means to an end for him. God, what a beautiful house, Brian whistled as he pulled up to the house in South Shore Baylor Lake. Thanks, Jacqueline murmured. They entered the house. Hi, Brian, Michelle said from the living room sofa. What? What are you doing here? Brian almost shouted. Oh, I thought I'd show your wife and daughters where you'll be living, Jack Hebert said, entering the room with a box of belongings. Hi, Jacqueline. I just stopped by to pick up a few more of my things. I already told you yes, Michelle whispered, keeping her voice down. After Stacy, I told you it was over. The pregnant woman got up from the overly soft couch, walked over to Brian, and slapped him hard across the face. Looks like you two have something to talk about, so I'll be going, Jack smiled. The girls really enjoyed the pool. You son of a bitch, Jacqueline snapped at Jack, who was still smiling. By the way, you all owe Danny $12 for watching Millie and Mandy today, Jack said, pointing to the neighbor girl who was splashing around in the pool with 2 girls. Then he left the house. They had almost $84,000 in equity. Jacqueline screamed, cried, and begged Jack to forgive her. She didn't want to lose the house and $17,000 worth of furniture she had managed to save up. Her brand new Mercedes-Benz had 3 years left on the loan. Jacqueline begged, pleaded, and cried for Jack to forgive her. She knew she couldn't afford a car on her salary, and she almost fainted when her lawyer, Parker Johnson, informed her that Jacqueline would have to pay half of Deirdre's college tuition and living expenses. On top of that, she was already struggling to make ends meet on her salary as a librarian at a public school. "Oh no, honey." Monique laughed nervously when Jacqueline approached her mother with the idea of moving in with them. "But it's the only thing I can do," Jacqueline whined. "Honey, it's a 2-bedroom apartment," Roger said. "I'm so glad your father didn't live to see this," Monique said. She raised an eyebrow and looked at her daughter. "Do you remember?" Monique asked. "You brought home a boy named Jack Hebert, and your father told you that boy was a snake in the grass. How shocked he was when he saw how wrong he was. Their eldest son, John Jr., called his father. Dad, Mom wants to know if she can stay here, said JJ. Son, you have a room, so of course she can stay, said Jack. Well, it's just, I don't want any problems, JJ confessed. Son, that woman changed your diapers, cleaned up after you, fed you all these years. If you have a room, give it to her, Jack said. I love you, Dad, JJ said. Michelle Melançon kept her word. She did not forgive Brian for his attempt at infidelity. Brian realized that it was impossible to live on half his salary and return to his parents. But at least this arrangement allowed Brian's parents to spend a lot of time with Amelia and Amanda, their 2 granddaughters. And when Michelle gave birth to Barry Melançon, named after her father, they began to see him often as well. Barry? I thought we were going to name him after me, Brian whined. We were going to, Michelle replied sharply. But you made sure there was no we anymore. Jack had planned for the apartment to be temporary, but he found that he enjoyed not spending hours mowing the lawn, raking leaves, mulching the garden, planting flowers, or cleaning the pool. He discovered he didn't need to change the wallpaper, paint the spare bedroom, or rip out the old carpet. Jack discovered he liked not cleaning the garage, the attic, or the tool shed. His apartment had a closet. He found that it perfectly held 12 suits, 12 shirts, and 24 ties. It also held 3 pairs of shoes, a long coat, and a short jacket. A small dresser held 4 pairs of jeans, 12 pairs of underwear, 12 pairs of socks, and 4 shirts. The furniture was also minimalist. Jack had his favorite armchair, 2 bookshelves, a small table, 2 dining chairs, and a full-size bed. He didn't even have a TV. He briefly considered using the TV in Deirdre's room, but couldn't think of a single show he wanted to watch. Jack Hebert was an avid Saints fan, but Red Sports Bar had a 61-inch LCD TV, cold beer, insanely spicy chicken wings, cold beer, jalapeno nachos, and cold beer. If he needed to watch a TV show, he could watch it on his computer. He discovered that he liked to cook. Jacqueline always yelled at him for making a mess when he tried to cook. But here he had a choice, either cook endless frozen meals in the microwave or learn how to cook. And he learned to cook. One evening, Jack was driving home. A colleague at work had given him a new recipe for baked chicken breast, and he was just about to put some chicken legs in the bag when he happened to glance at a colorful building. Jack had driven down that same road day after day, passing by that building. He couldn't understand why he decided to stop there at that particular moment. The curtains were open, and he stared at the glass window of Kizzy's dance school. Inside, 7 couples were spinning and gliding. A car horn snapped him out of his trance, and Jack turned and pulled into the parking lot next to the building. He got into his car and watched. An attractive young woman with a blissful smile on her beautiful face showed them a few basic moves and then waved them in to start. Although he couldn't hear the music, the smooth movements of the dancers filled Jack's head with music. Then, the lesson was clearly over. Some couples stood chatting, while others stepped out into the twilight and got into their cars. Jack made up his mind and got out of the car. Hello, can I help you? Smiled the young dancer, stepping away from an elderly couple. Yes, I'm not with anyone, but do you teach private lessons? God, they dance so beautifully, stammered Jack, not knowing why he was there. Kizzy smiled even wider and took his nervous hands in her warm palms. My goodness, today is your lucky day, she insisted. All right, Jack said, not feeling lucky at all. Let's go see what we can do, said Kizzy, pulling him toward the counter. He agreed to sign up for a 12-week program and arranged to come back on Wednesday evening. At 6 o'clock, I'll introduce you to your dance partner, said Kizzy, handing him the receipt. Oh my gosh, today is my lucky day, Jack smiled. Even as they prepared dinner, Jack couldn't help humming the tune that played in his head as he imagined the dancing couples. Jack met Jacqueline Adams at Cabrini High School. She and her family had just moved from Stumping Stone, Louisiana, so her father could take a job at the Baggett Mattress Factory. She was pretty, but she didn't stand out among the other beauties at Cabrini High. Jack Hebert, of course, didn't stand out among the Cabrini elite. He wasn't particularly handsome, particularly rich, or particularly athletic. He didn't have a nice car, he wasn't poetic, and he couldn't dance. But he was smart. After several weeks of being completely ignored by the Cabrini High School elite, Jacqueline Adams was thrilled when Jack Hebert quietly asked her if she wanted to go to Jade Garden for Chinese food. And after her father declared Jack Hebert to be nothing more than a snake in the grass, a dog in heat, Jack rose several steps in Jacqueline's estimation. The Cabrini School was having its fall dance, and Jacqueline waited for Jack to ask her. As the day drew nearer, she finally asked him when he was going to ask her out. I don't know how to dance, he confessed to her. And she went with Joe Manzella. Suddenly, Jacqueline and Joe were a couple. Jack was a little disappointed, a little hurt, but at the same time, he was practical. They were 18 years old. They could date anyone they wanted. In a few months, he would be attending Southwestern Louisiana University in Lafayette, and Jacqueline would go wherever she wanted, and they would probably never see each other again. But Joe Manzella's smirk annoyed Jack. Hey, Hebert, how's it going? Joe teased. Huh? Oh, everything's fine, Manzella. How's Gina doing? Jack asked, referring to Joe's older sister, who had a reputation as a slut. Joe was muscular and Jack was smart. Joe swung at Jack, but Jack dodged him, and Joe hit him in the cinderblock wall. Ouch, that hurts, Jack grinned, looking at Joe's swollen hand. Jacqueline tried dating several other guys to make Jack jealous, but in the end, she had to admit defeat and go back to him. She didn't go to the winter or spring dances. Jack Hebert couldn't dance. 29 years later in apartment 2B, Jack was eagerly waiting to learn how to dance. Chapter 2. It was Wednesday, and Jack was wearing burgundy shoes, a medium brown suit, a blue shirt, and a burgundy tie. The burgundy shoes were his most comfortable pair. I could have sworn it was Wednesday, Jill, one of the assistant administrators in the personnel department, remarked as Jack passed her cubicle. Today is Wednesday, Jack said. No, Wednesday is dark blue day, smiled the young woman, with a blue-gray tie or a blue tie with yellow dots. Not anymore, smiled Jack. We changed the rules a little. Is that a new suit? Asked Rhonda, another accountant. No, it's his Friday suit, replied Bill, one of the IT specialists. Oh, I see, said Rhonda, looking at Jack for a moment in confusion, then returning to her computer screen. No, Bill, look, it's frozen. It won't go to the next page. If the costume change caused a minor commotion in the office, the fact that Jack left 20 minutes early nearly caused panic. He drove to Tommy's Po' Boys, a small restaurant next to the dance school, and almost ordered his usual dish, a ham and cheese sandwich with olive sauce. No, you know what? Give me a large shrimp sandwich. Hot sauce, yes. Hot sauce on the table, yes. Give me shrimp and a Coke, Jack ordered. He enjoyed his sandwich, glanced at his watch again, and entered the next room. Nervously sucking on a mint candy, he stood apart from the other patrons, who were all couples. Great. You're here, Kizzy exclaimed when she saw Jack. Meet Michelle Melançon, your partner. The last time Jack had seen her, she was 7, almost 8 months old. All he remembered about her was that she was a sweet, plump young woman with 2 very pretty little girls, and that her beautiful face was constantly wet with tears and then red with anger. Michelle Melancorn was 4 feet 11 inches tall and weighed probably 170 pounds. Her small face was round, her mouth a button, her nose a round bump, and her large brown eyes were round. Everything about Michelle Melancorn was round. Hi, Bubbles, Jack said, without even thinking to say hello to her. And she burst out laughing. Why do you call me that? She asked, still laughing. I don't know, he admitted, blushing slightly, as they were now the center of attention of the other couples. It was the first thing that came to mind. He learned that her parents had paid for 12 weeks of dance lessons. It was a way to get her out of the house for a couple of hours. But when Michelle showed up for her first lesson, Kizzy had to admit that there were no boys for her. That didn't bother Michelle. She sat and watched the class, admiring their movements. And then Kizzy wrote to me and told me to come here this Wednesday, Michelle muttered. By the end of the first lesson, Jack was drenched in sweat. Halfway through the lesson, he had to take off his jacket. Then Michelle raised her small hand, loosened his tie, and unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. She didn't think about it. She just raised her hand and did it. Is that better? She asked as they did another figure. Relax, Jack. Let the music guide you, Kizzy encouraged him. When the lesson was over, Michelle took his hand. Will you come here next week? Please say you will. I had so much fun, she whispered. You had fun? Dancing with an old man? He smiled, taking off his jacket. You're not old, she said. I'm twice your age, he objected. Yes, but it doesn't matter, she said. I'll be here, he smiled. As he danced with her, he tried to look into her big brown eyes. She smiled warmly at him and he blushed. But when she left the building, he looked back at her. As if sensing his gaze, Michelle turned at the door and smiled broadly at him. Did you have fun? Asked Kizzy. You know what? I had fun. I know I'm terrible at it, but I had fun, Jack admitted. First of all, you're not terrible. You're just starting out, said another woman. And second, dancing is fun, added her partner. Take care of the second one, and the first will come naturally. I couldn't have said it better myself, agreed Kizzy. The next morning, Jack took his Thursday suit out of the closet, but then decided to wear his Wednesday suit after all. Now I'm completely confused, Jill teased him as he walked down the hall. He just smiled. His cell phone rang, and seeing that it was JJ, he answered. Dad, are you there? Listen, is that Sean? JJ hissed into the phone. Is your mother driving you crazy? Jack guessed. Yeah, did you hear she got fired from school? JJ asked. No, she didn't get fired, Jack sighed. Yeah, and that guy Brian, too, JJ said. Wow, Jack said. Why? Did she say why she was let go? No, trust me, I asked her, but she just said she didn't want to talk about it, JJ replied. Jack recognized that phrase. Jacqueline said that when she was cornered. She just said she didn't want to talk about it, and she repeated that phrase until the question was finally closed. And with Shauna, the baby is due in a couple of months, and JJ continued. Okay, I'll talk to her, Jack sighed. They met at Jade Gardens. Jack couldn't help but smile sadly. Jacqueline obviously thought this was a date. She had put on quite a bit of makeup and squeezed into a dress. A year ago, Jack would have been thrilled to see her in a dress like that. Today, however, on a woman who didn't want to grow old, the outfit looked dull and worn. You look beautiful, he said and sat down opposite her. Thank you, and you look… Is that a new suit? Jacqueline asked. Yes, I wore the wrong suit yesterday and everyone almost had a heart attack, Jack smiled. I realized I was becoming too predictable, so I donated all my old suits to Goodwill and bought new ones. Well, that's probably a good thing, Jacqueline muttered bitterly. Yes, it's good, Jack agreed. The waitress approached us and asked if they were ready to order. You know, Jacqueline, I know exactly what you're going to order. You always order the same thing, Jack said. But I'm willing to bet $1,000 that you can't guess what I want. She looked at him for a long time, trying to remember what he usually ordered. Are you ready to order? The waitress asked again. She'll have the spring rolls and pork and sweet and sour sauce, right? Jack said. Right, Jacqueline replied. And I'll have a glass of iced tea, sweet and sour tea, chicken kung pao, and fried rice. Jack finished his order. So, how's it going? Jacqueline asked. Fine, Jack replied. Work is going well. I bought myself a small bachelor pad. I was just telling you about my new suits. They've gone up a bit since we bought the last ones. And Rhonda just announced that she's pregnant. So I'll be looking for a temporary replacement for her. How are you? The waitress poured him some sweet iced tea, and Jack nodded politely. He listened as Jacqueline complained about losing her job, how difficult it was living with JJ and his wife. Shauna didn't seem to like her very much. Deirdre was still mad at her, but Penelope and Percy were at least nice to her. But none of them will say they have a room, she concluded her song of woe. Then find yourself a place to live. You're a grown woman, Jack said when the waitress brought their food. With what? My looks? Jacqueline replied sharply. I just told you I lost my job. Well, if you can't use your looks, try using your charming personality, Jack suggested. Go to hell, Jack, Jacqueline snorted. Just eat, Jack said. Every time they bring me this dish, I swear it's hotter than the last time I ordered it. While Jack ordered chocolate ice cream for her and Neapolitan for himself, Jacqueline began to talk about reconciliation. Not just no, but hell no, he smiled. But why? She almost shouted. So I can sit around and wait for you to tell me next time that we've grown apart and it's not me. It's you. That you just need to have some fun. That it doesn't mean anything, that it's just fun. That it will make us stronger as a couple. Jack asked, putting a spoonful of ice cream in his mouth. Jacqueline seriously considered throwing the ice cream at him, at his new expensive suit. The waitress returned and placed the bill on the table. Jack quickly checked the check and placed his credit card on the small tray. The sullen woman immediately walked away. Maybe it's hormones, Jacqueline suggested. I'm getting older after all, my periods are getting less frequent. And instead of going to Dr. Pellier and talking to him about it, you decided to have fun with another man, Jack said, signing the bill and adding a 15% tip. But he was so understanding because you've never been so busy and Brian, Jacqueline whined. I've always been busy with all the nonsense you've decided to do right here, right now, Jack said and stood up. I've always been too busy driving our daughter around. He shook his head sadly. You know what I haven't heard? I've heard all the crap, it's my fault, it's hormones. Brian, listen to you, Jack said. But I've never once heard Jacqueline say she's sorry. I've never once heard Jacqueline say it's her fault. But I'm sorry, Jacqueline said quickly. JJ and Shona need that bedroom for their baby, Jack said. So you need to find yourself a small apartment. There's a program at St. Elizabeth's Court that will help you find a job. Take advantage of it. Jacqueline burned another bridge. Returning to the small bungalow where JJ and Shona lived, she yelled at Shona, calling her a black bitch. Thanks, Dad, JJ said bitterly into the phone. No, I talked to your mom and told her you needed that room for the baby, Jack replied. What did she say or do after that? That's on her conscience. Jack almost caused another panic at St. Elizabeth's social services when he showed up at the office on Friday. Instead of his usual mid-length brown suit, he was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt. But when Jack left the office at 5:10 the following Wednesday, wearing tight blue jeans, a blue shirt, and loafers, with his suit slung over his shoulder, a slight seismic wave rippled through the building. And you're leaving half an hour early? Asked Rhonda. Go, Jack, go, Jack, go, Jack, chanted Garrett, one of the IT specialists. At Tommy's restaurant, Jack ordered fried oysters and a Coke. After finishing his meal, he had to admit that hot cheese with ham and olive sauce was still his favorite dish. But you never know until you try, he said aloud. Michelle was already waiting for him and smiled broadly as she ran up to greet him. This suit is much more comfortable than the old, uncomfortable one, she praised, stroking his arm. Hi, Bubbles, you look good too. He smiled. She laughed with delight at being called Bubbles. He was much more relaxed and really enjoying the lesson. Well, it's time to get back to the kids, Michelle said as Kizzy congratulated everyone on a great lesson. I'm sure Barry is hungry. Barry? Oh, yes, 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 baby. Jack smiled. How are the little ones? Millie has gotten to the point where she's asking why we can't live with Daddy most of the time, and Mandy is starting to whine about it too. But that's only because Millie whines, and Barry is happy as long as his diaper is dry, Michelle admitted. See you next Wednesday, Bubbles, Jack smiled. I'm going to give you a nickname, Michelle threatened. Yeah, I can't wait, Jack said. Percy was the next of his children to call Jack to complain about his mother. Dad, please do something, Percy whined. She's been here for 2 days, and Addison is ready to kill her, or me. What am I, a hired killer? Jack asked. That was exactly what Jacqueline had asked him when he called to tell her to get out of Percy's 2-room apartment. My apartment only costs $425 a month. You can't tell me you can't afford $425 a month, can you? Jack asked her. I got fired from my job, Jack. It's hard to pay rent when you don't have any money, Jacqueline muttered. Jacqueline, we sold the house, Jack reminded her. We each got a check for $42,000. Where did all that money go? She didn't answer his question, just begged him to change his mind and make up. Remember what you said when I asked you if you wanted to go to the Catskills? Jack asked. On our last vacation, I said, hey, let's go to the Catskills. We really liked it there last time. Remember what you said? No, you know I don't remember, she replied sharply. But I'm sure you do. You said why? Come on, Jacqueline, why? Make up? Why? Jack said. Penelope made it clear to her mother that no matter how much she loved her, there was simply no room for her in her apartment. Besides, Mom, you hate dogs. And Samson and Delilah were here first, Penelope said as her two Irish wolfhounds whined for attention. Chapter 3. Well, Jack, where are you going? Jill asked as he walked past her cubicle with his suit in his hands. Excuse me? He laughed. I don't ask you where you're going every time you leave here. Yeah, but I don't smile like that every time you walk out of here, she smiled. Jack knew that if he told Jill about this before the first cup of coffee was poured the next morning, everyone at St. Elizabeth Social Services would know about it. Everyone knew he was divorcing Jacqueline, and everyone knew why. Women would come up to him, call Jacqueline a bitch, and tell Jack that not all women were like that. To make matters worse, the men would either pat him on the back silently or avoid him altogether. Okay, Jill, but don't tell anyone, Jack said. Oh, you know I won't, Jill promised. Well, every Wednesday, after the divorce, how am I going to live on half, huh? Jack said. I know that, bitch, Jill agreed. But anyway, every Wednesday I make a little money modeling for art classes at ULD, Jack whispered. What? Jill asked, looking at him suspiciously. Yeah, at Louisiana State University in DeHardy, Jack asked. And they have art classes like that? $100 to get naked and just stand there. When I did it the first time, God, I was so embarrassed. One girl said she almost ran out of red paint trying to wash the blush off me, but after that, Jack made it to his car before he burst out laughing. He was still giggling when he entered Kizzy's. Okay, Jackhammer, what's so funny? Michelle asked, grabbing his arm. He blushed, but told her what he had told the scandalous gossip at work. They both laughed together, and she covered her mouth with her delicate hand. I'd pay to draw you, she confessed, when Kizzy turned back to the class. So, Jackhammer, are you ready? Michelle teased. Yeah, that's what all the girls call me, Jack said, and Michelle immediately blushed. I didn't mean that, she exclaimed, slapping his arm. Trouble? Kizzy smiled. Yeah, she hit me, Jack complained jokingly. You should have heard what he said, Michelle complained. I'll think of another nickname for you, Michelle promised as they danced. Whatever you say, Bubbles. Jack smiled and spun her around. That's it, Kizzy encouraged them. Several other couples also cheered them on, and Jack and Michelle smiled broadly. You want to? Jack stammered when Kizzy announced the end of class. Michelle smiled at him. Her smile didn't make him any less nervous, but he made up his mind. Want to get a coffee? He asked. I can't, Michelle replied. Don't forget I'm breastfeeding. Oh, damn, I didn't even think of that, Jack agreed. But what about the big malt at Clark's? Michelle smiled, taking his hand. Yeah, sounds great, Jack agreed, smiling and blushing. We'll take your car, Michelle decided. But when she stepped outside and saw Jack sitting behind the wheel of his smart car, she nudged him toward her minivan. I'm not getting in that, she declared. It's like trying to squeeze a basketball into a golf ball. Come on, they're much bigger than they look, Jack argued. But he got into her minivan anyway. She sent her parents a text message saying she would be staying at Clark's. Yes, it's a date, she replied to her mother's question. They hadn't driven 2 miles from Kizzy's dance school to Clark's drive-in when Michelle's cell phone rang at least 8 times. You want to answer that? Jack asked. God, no, it's my family trying to drive me crazy, she replied, glancing at the display. Michelle decided on a large chocolate milkshake, while Jack chose a vanilla cone with frosting. So, Jack Rabbit, why did you decide to take up dancing? Michelle asked as the waitress walked away. Jack Rabbit, huh? Jack smiled. Yeah, that's what my girlfriends call me. Oh, never mind, Michelle laughed as her phone rang again. And stop looking at all those girls in shorts, she demanded. Oh, I was just thinking how good they look on you, Jack muttered before his brain had a chance to tell him to shut up. And before she could respond, a police car pulled up to the entrance next to them. Michelle gasped when her older brother got out of the police car. Do you have a problem with your cell phone? Officer Richard Voisin asked his younger sister. No, I'm ignoring it just like you, she replied sharply. Yeah, Richard smirked. Hi, I'm, Jack began. Jonathan Archibald Hebert Sr., Richard introduced himself. I checked your license plate number. Really? Michelle exclaimed. I can't even buy myself a beer? Richard playfully pinched his sister's nose. After what Brian did to you, right? Richard said. Well, without us checking, yes. He nodded to Jack. Don't worry about not answering the phone, he said, getting ready to walk around the car. I already told everyone that Jack is fine. I hate you, she called after him. Yeah, I love you too, Richard said, opening the door. We'll have to take him back on Sunday. Jack grinned, and a moment later Michelle laughed too. I'm so sorry, she said. God, what an awkward first date, huh? Really? I think it's a great first date, Jack said. And that's what I'm going to call you. She screamed shrilly, taking a big gulp of her malt drink. Archibald, huh? Oh. Oh, God, no, he protested. But it's Archie, right? She teased. Her phone rang several more times, but she ignored it while they ate their ice cream. When she pulled up to his car, the only one in the parking lot of Kizzy's dance school, they continued talking quietly. Michelle could see that Jack was getting more and more nervous. Archie, do you want to kiss me? She finally asked. Yes, he admitted. She pulled him toward her and kissed him. Give me your phone number. You're coming over for dinner on Sunday, whether you want to or not, she said as they parted. 31 messages? She asked, glancing at her cell phone display again. Really? After another long kiss, Jack got out of her car and opened his door. He smiled, waved, and drove away, leaving her to respond to 31 messages. Chapter 4. Jack entered the building, and Whitney, a pretty girl with her hair down sitting at the front desk in the lobby, blushed as she greeted him. On the third floor, some women blushed. Others avoided looking at him. Several men smirked. Garrett smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Then Jack remembered what Jill had said the night before and couldn't help laughing. You won't tell anyone, will you? He asked Jill when he saw her in the break room. Oh, I didn't, she denied, putting on a guilty expression. He looked normal that Sunday, especially considering he was wearing a Saint sweater and khakis. See, he knows how to tuck his shirt in, Michelle's father, Barry Voisin, said to Michelle's older brother. Mr. Avci, are we going to swim at your house again? Amelia, mildly melancholy, asked. I'm sorry, sweetie, but I don't live in that house anymore, Jack replied. At that moment, he remembered that his apartment complex had a swimming pool. Quite often, he would come home from work and see various beautiful and not-so-beautiful bodies in and around the pool. But my apartment has a pool, he said. So we can swim at your place? Asked Mandy. I don't mind, agreed Jack. Do you really want to see that body in a swimsuit? Whispered Michelle. Whispered Michelle. Whispered Michelle. Oh my God, yes, Jack said firmly. You're so bad, she laughed loudly. He pulled himself together, especially when he told Barry and Richard that he usually went to Red's sports bar to watch the Saints play. They had the hottest wings, yeah. I swear you can't taste your tongue after you eat them. Do they have those wings? Barry asked. Yes, Jack and Richard replied. If anyone thought it was strange that Michelle's boyfriend was 20 years older than her, no one said anything. Jack and Barry reached for the last cookie to eat the last bits of rice with sauce and stewed steak. Marie Voisin tapped Barry's knuckles with her spoon. Yes, he's our guest. Give him the cookies, she ordered her husband. But I need those cookies, Barry whined, patting his bulging belly. Look, I'm about to melt. Well, I wouldn't want that to happen, Jack said. Go ahead, take the last one. No, you look hungrier than me, Barry smiled broadly. Okay, see you on Wednesday, Jack said, saying goodbye to Michelle's 6 brothers and sisters, Mandy, and her mom and dad. Do I have to wait that long? Michelle asked. Well, no, we can stop by side first and then foxtrots. We've had enough exercise, haven't we? Jack said. Oh, side by side? Marie asked. Damn, Barry, why don't you take me to side by side, huh? Because I'm stingy, that's why, Barry said. We're going in my van, yes? I'm not getting in that thing you call a car, Michelle said, wrinkling her nose at his smart car. Whoa, what are you talking about? That's a Mercedes-Benz, yes, Jack said. That's not a Mercedes-Benz, Michelle smirked. No, it's a Mercedes-Benz, Jack said. They hugged and kissed for as long as they felt comfortable with her family watching. And then Jack promised he'd be there at 6:30 the next evening. Jack was surprised at how easily he slipped back into the dialect of his youth. His mother's parents spoke almost no English, mostly Cajun French. His father's parents spoke with a strong accent and switched to Cajun French when they were upset or excited. Many conversations at the dinner table were a mixture of English and Cajun French. When Henry Jonathan Hébert and Eliza Cynthia Arnaud Hébert wanted to hide something from their children, they spoke to each other in Cajun French. They had no idea that all 3 of their sons understood Cajun French. In high school and college, Jack gradually lost his accent. Working as an administrator at St. Elizabeth Community Services, he tried to pronounce words clearly without a Cajun accent. But one day spent at his desk brought Voisina back to his roots. He went online, found the phone number for the side-by-side steakhouse, and left a message asking for a table for two for the following evening at 6:45 p.m. Even a call from his ex-wife didn't spoil his mood. "Hi, Jack, it's me," she purred. "I see," he replied, trying not to slip into his Cajun accent. Jacqueline had mocked that accent when his parents weren't around. She also mocked their cuisine, calling it unhealthy. "Despite what you all think, fat is not a food," she said contemptuously. So Jack tried not to give Jacqueline any reason to mock him. "So, how's it going?" she asked. "You know what? Yeah, it's fine," Jack replied, then added irritably. "Well, I finally did it. I broke down and bought myself a little apartment," Jacqueline said. "Glad to hear it," Jack agreed. "And I thought maybe you'd like to come over," Jacqueline cooed, pretending to be charming. "What? Why?" Jack asked. "Well, to see the apartment, I'll make the stuffed peppers you used to love, remember?" Jackie said. "Jackie, I don't think so," Jack said. And just like that, Jackie's fake cheerfulness disappeared. She became tearful and self-pitying. She added that none of their children wanted to talk to her anymore. "I mean, Deirdre, my little girl. She left me, can you imagine?" she sobbed. "Well, I'm busy tomorrow," Jack conceded. "How about Wednesday?" Jacqueline quickly suggested, her tears drying up as quickly as they had appeared. "No, I have plans for Wednesday too," Jack said. "What?" Jacqueline asked. Jack briefly repeated what Jill had told him. "I'm going to take some classes at the school to brush up on my skills," he said. It wasn't a complete lie. He had been taking classes at Louisiana State University in DeSoto for several years, and he had indeed brushed up on his skills. He just didn't want to tell her that he was improving his dancing skills. "How about Tuesday?" she suggested. "Yes, that's fine," he replied. At 9:30 on Monday, a girl named Lacey called his cell phone and confirmed that a table for two had been reserved for 6:40 at Side by Side Restaurant. "We look forward to seeing you, Mr. Hebert," the girl said in a pleasant voice. "Not as much as I am," Jack joked, and Lacey giggled. Michelle giggled too when Jack called her to remind her about their date that evening. "As if I'm thinking about anything else?" she asked. Michelle ended the conversation with the words, "I love you." Jacqueline hadn't said "I love you" until they had known each other for almost a year. And even then, it was in response to his declaration of love. Jacqueline didn't use affectionate words with him. The only time she ever called him sweetheart or baby was when she wanted something. At 5:30, Jack had to greet Michelle's entire family again, her mother and father, brothers and sisters, nephews and nieces. She had only one nephew named Richie, Millie, Mandy, and Barry, who smiled at him with his toothless smile. Michelle was wearing a dress that was a little too small for her. It was clearly her best dress, and it was clearly bought for her quite a while ago. Jack guessed that the dress had been bought before Amelia got pregnant. "Damn, Bubbles, I need to go home and change," Jack said, even though he was wearing a great pinstriped black suit, a white shirt, and a blood-red tie. "What, do you look good?" she asked. "Yes, but not as good as you," he replied, and she blushed with pride. "Why don't you say something like that?" asked Marie Barry. "Because then I'd have to say it all the time," Barry replied, and kissed his wife. "Oh, you're lying," she laughed and kissed him. "I'll provide you with a police escort," Richard joked. "If you do, I'll kill you," Michelle threatened. "Ah, yes, Mr. Haber," greeted the restaurant hostess. "This way, please." Michelle looked around the elegant restaurant with admiration. The best place Brian had ever taken her was a Mexican restaurant called Casa Ole. There were no prices on the menu, and she pondered this small fact. "Honey, it's so you don't have to worry about what to order," Jack said quietly. He took her small hand in his. "You'll get whatever you want," he said. When we're together, you get whatever you want, you hear me?" Looking into his hazel eyes, Michelle felt her insides turn to liquid. "I love you, yes," she whispered. Then her large brown eyes grew even larger and she opened her mouth in a silent sigh. "I mean," she tried to correct herself. "Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I love you," Jack smiled. "Really?" Michelle asked breathlessly. The ribeye was cooked to perfection, crispy on the outside, retaining the natural juices of the thick cut of meat, and light pink on the inside. Michelle tried to finish it but could only eat half. Jack managed to eat the whole bone, but they both agreed that dessert would have to wait. Chapter 5. What a change from yesterday, huh? Jill asked when Jack came out of the office wearing his usual jeans and shirt, which he wore on Wednesdays. What? Jack asked. Well, yesterday you left here looking like your dog had died, Jill remarked. And today, you've got a Wednesday smile on your face. Jack smiled even wider and headed for the elevator. Last night, he had visited his ex-wife's new apartment. Jacqueline had rented a two-bedroom apartment that was about 200 square feet larger than Jack's apartment. The complex was nice. There were no disabled parking spaces in the parking lot, and the grounds were clean. The interior was clean and simple, with white walls and beige carpet. The stuffed peppers were good. Jacqueline had made a broccoli casserole and baked it in the oven. Before they began to eat, all the members of the Voisin family bowed their heads in prayer. When Sunday dinner began, Jack began to pray, blessing the food. "I'm not bullying you, don't pray," Jacqueline reproached him when he bowed his head. During dinner, Jacqueline complained. She complained about the high rent, the expensive furniture, her boring job at the courthouse, and the noisy neighbors. She brought up reconciliation again. "Did you hear me?" Jacqueline asked, trying not to show her irritation. Jack finished his casserole, took a sip of cloudy iced tea, and turned to her. "What made you change your mind about me?" he asked bluntly. He asked her directly. "What does that have to do with anything?" Jacqueline hissed. "It has everything to do with it," Jack said. He put his napkin on the table. "Jacqueline, for some reason you decided to have fun with Brian Melanson. I asked you not to. I told you I didn't approve. I told you it would cost us our marriage, but you went anyway. The only reason you didn't leave? I ruined everything, right?" "I really didn't think," Jacqueline admitted weakly. "I know you didn't really think I would fight this so hard. Didn't think I would leave or divorce you. Didn't think you wouldn't get your way like you always do," Jack sighed. "See?" Jacqueline exclaimed in a shrill voice. "You're just as much to blame as I am. You always—" "Jacqueline, I've never heard you apologize," he said and stood up. "You're not done yet. You haven't said—" Jacqueline objected. "Oh yes, I'm done," Jack said and headed for the door. "Don't call me anymore, okay? We have nothing to talk about." He went into Clark's and ordered a chili cheeseburger and a vanilla milkshake. "I'd be afraid to drive a car like that," the waitress admitted, looking at his small car. "Yeah, but I get 42 miles to the gallon," Jack agreed cheerfully. When he got to his apartment, he and Michelle exchanged text messages until 10 o'clock that night. "Good night, Avci," she wrote, adding a kiss. "I love you, good night," he replied. "I love you more," she replied. "I know," he replied. He laughed when she replied with a tongue-out emoji. Today was Wednesday, and Jack was looking forward to dancing with his bubbles. Whitney wished him good night, though a blush appeared on her smooth face. A hot ham and cheese sandwich with olive sauce and a few drops of hot sauce, and Jack was full and ready. Exclaimed Michelle and rushes over to greet him. "Hi, Bubbles," he smiles, checking out her outfit. "You look good, yeah." They dance, Kizzy prompting the moves, correcting the ones that need fixing and praising the ones that are right. When she announced that the lesson was over, Jack leaned down and kissed Michelle gently on the lips. Brian has the kids this weekend," Michelle said meaningfully. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about making love to you," Jack murmured. She stood on tiptoe and kissed him. "Okay, sounds good," she agreed. On Thursday, Jack talked to Michelle's father, Barry, man to man. He learned that Michelle's wedding had been rushed and there would be no honeymoon. So Jack planned a romantic weekend. And on Friday, he left work at noon. Jack couldn't help laughing. Jacqueline's Mercedes-Benz was parked in the Superior parking lot. They called them used, but even the salesman had to admit they were used cars. "You know what? Yeah, I'll take it," Jack agreed and bought Jacqueline's car. Then he went to his tiny apartment and packed a suitcase. His good mood soured a little when he pulled up to the Voisin's house and saw Brian Melanson fiddling with a child seat in Barry and Mandy's car. Millie was already sitting in the front seat, buckled up. At that moment, an idea struck Jack. Let me do it," he said, taking Barry from Brian's arms. "You take Mandy." "Hello, Mr. Avci," Millie greeted him. "You're not going to hit me, are you?" Brian asked fearfully. "What? No, go ahead, take her," Jack said, quickly securing Barry's car seat to the seat. Then he walked over to Millie, kissed her on the forehead, and then Mandy. "Do you have a minute?" I need to talk to you, Jack said to Brian. Are you busy? How about Monday evening? Monday evening? No, I'm not busy, Brian agreed. Then Jack helped Michelle with her suitcase. The trip took 2 hours during which they just talked and got to know each other. Michelle told him that Brian was Richard's friend and had always been very kind to her. I know I'm fat, but he always says hello to me and tells me I'm beautiful, Michelle said. Hello, you're beautiful, Jack said. And because I'm allergic to latex, Michelle said. I think I know what you mean, Jack said. He pursed his lips slightly. He had bought 12 packs of condoms. But if Michelle turned out to be allergic to latex, they would either have to give them up or take a chance. Jack hoped they would take a chance. Michelle hoped they would take a chance too. Traffic in Baton Rouge was a nightmare, and Jack breathed a sigh of relief when they finally reached Gonzales. Bourbon Street opened the eyes of a girl who had never left Desgard, Louisiana. Café du Monde was delightful. Jack arranged for them to eat there every day. But when night enveloped the city in velvety warmth, Michelle took Jack's hand and looked at him with her large brown eyes. Let's go back to the room, she suggested. Chapter 6. She chattered nonstop on the way to the hotel, chattered nonstop in the old creaky elevator, and chattered nonstop while he fumbled with the keycard. Bubbles, are you nervous? Jack asked quietly. No, Michelle replied, then nodded, leaning against his chest. I'm fat, she admitted. And you're very beautiful, Jack said. He didn't deny that she was fat. She weighed 45 pounds more than she should have, and she knew it. Any attempt on his part to deny that she was overweight would have seemed insincere and dishonest. So Jack told Michelle the truth. She was beautiful. Fat or not, she was beautiful. She sat down on the edge of the bed and watched him turn off the 2 lamps in the room. Then they got down to business. Chapter 7. Brian looked nervous, anxious. Jack ordered a cup of coffee, asked the girl behind the counter to add condensed milk, and then walked over to the table. Hi, Brian, how's it going? Jack asked, nodding and greeting and sitting down on the bench opposite Brian. Fine, I'm fine. How are you? Brian stammered. Yeah, fine. I've got some black bean soup simmering on the stove, waiting for me to get home, Jack said and took a sip of his coffee. So, what did you want to talk about? Brian got down to business. Why does my wife want to cheat on me? Jack muttered, deciding to get straight to the point. What? Brian asked. Several scenarios ran through his head, but Jack's direct question didn't fit into any of them. Jack gulped down his hot coffee and set the cup aside. I gave her everything she asked for. This huge monster of a house? God, I hated this place, but Jacqueline just had to have it. Her car? She had a nice Lincoln, but she just had to have a Mercedes-Benz, Jack said. He looked at Brian. I'm just trying to understand myself, he admitted. I gave her everything she wanted, never cheated on her, never hit her, never gambled. And then she just got up and said she was going to have a little affair, and I'm trying to understand why. She was getting old, Brian said. So am I. We all are, Jack muttered. Brian raised his hand. You said you wanted to know why, but I can't tell you if you're too busy talking, Brian said. They looked at each other for a long time. Finally, Jack nodded in agreement. She's getting a little older, Brian continued, and her youngest daughter doesn't live with her anymore. Dee, or Debbie, or whatever her name is. Deirdre, Jack agreed. And she feels old and useless, Brian continued. He smiled and shrugged. All it took was saying, wow, you look good today, and you really have a daughter who's already in college, and Jacqueline smiled and laughed, Brian admitted. Damn, I told her she looked good all the time, Jack muttered angrily. Yeah, but from you? That doesn't count, Brian said. You're her husband. But that doesn't mean you can't tell her that, it just doesn't count. Brian finished his coffee and looked at the counter. Go on, Jack said. Get some more. Brian did so and returned. Anyway, she smiles at me, flirts a little. She's flattered that a man much younger than her is paying attention to her, Brian said. He blew on his cup and winced when his lips touched the hot mug. Hot, Jack agreed, sipping his coffee. So I hooked up with Cindy, the secretary at school, Stacy, the chemistry teacher, and the one Michelle caught me with, Brian said. Both men sat silently for a long time. It doesn't take much attention before they start talking about their husbands. He doesn't pay attention to them, doesn't take them to restaurants, prefers to sit on his ass and watch TV, Brian said. He took a sip of coffee and wrinkled his nose slightly from the heat. You just bought yourself that smart car, Brian recalled. And as soon as I asked her if she regretted buying it, she started telling me about all your faults. Brian shrugged. What? He bought himself a new car? And it's impractical? What a selfish bastard, Brian suggested. What? He doesn't take you to the dances? He'd rather watch football? I bet things aren't so smooth in bed either, huh? What does it matter? I work my ass off for her Monday through Sunday, Jack snorted. Most husbands do, Brian admitted, but all I have to do is hint that it's not enough. Jack emptied his mug, even though the coffee had already turned bitter in his stomach. Is Michelle in love with you? He asked, more to himself than to Brian. In love? She's always been a chubby girl, and all you had to do was tell her she was cute, Brian replied mockingly. The worst of, he faltered, remembering seeing Jack at Michelle's house last Friday. So when the serpent left the Garden of Eden, he became an English teacher, Jack thought as he stood up. However, he couldn't help but smile. Brian Melancholy was a skilled seducer, but Michelle had told Jack that Brian Melancholy wasn't very good at love. Jack smiled stiffly, wished Brian a good night, and left Jitter's coffee shop. Jack went to his small apartment, ate some black bean soup, and added a little hot sauce to it. Then he and Michelle exchanged a few text messages. On Tuesday morning, Jack not only woke up with a smile, he had been waking up with a smile for a long time, but he also didn't feel like a loser. He had been tormented by these nagging questions for a long time. Why did Jacqueline decide to cheat? Was it really her first time? Why couldn't he handle his role as a husband and provider? But now it was much clearer to him that he hadn't failed. Maybe he had been distracted, so to speak, but it wasn't his failure. He also realized that he had outgrown the bachelor pad he was renting. Epilogue. Today was the 12th lesson. Jack signed up for 12 more lessons and paid for himself and Michelle, even though Michelle's father, Barry, offered to help out a little. What? Why? You're not going to dance with her, Jack smiled, watching Miley hold one hand and Mandy the other. Now tell me again why we have to go to McDonald's. Because Mr. Afchi, they have hamburgers and French fries, and you can buy a milkshake, and then go play on the slide, Millie patiently explained why they should go to McDonald's for dinner. And there's a prize in the box, Mandy agreed. Now, as Jack and Michelle spun around the dance floor, dancing together with grace and beauty, Jack smiled at Michelle. She smiled back at him, her face flushed with happiness. It's hard to believe that 12 weeks ago you couldn't tell your left hand from your right, Kizzy praised him. The music began to fade, and Jack let Michelle out of his embrace. Then, when Michelle turned in the opposite direction, he dropped to one knee. Michelle looked at him in confusion. Other couples stopped and looked at Jack and Michelle, who were standing in the center of the large hall. Michelle Voisin, I love you with all my heart, Jack said loudly and firmly. Will you marry me? He held out a beautiful yellow gold ring with a 1-carat diamond surrounded by 4 smaller diamonds. Michelle admired the ring, then grabbed Jack, knocked him to the floor, lay on top of him, and began kissing him passionately. Oh, Ochi, she exclaimed and laughed. The other couples applauded and laughed as Jack tried to get to his feet. I take that to mean yes? Kizzy laughed when Michelle finally got off Jack. And you're all going to my wedding, you hear? Michelle ordered, looking at the ring. Right, Dad? Teased JJ when Jack called to tell him the good news. My stepmom is younger than me. Deirdre pretended to be upset that she would no longer be the youngest in the family. Millie assured Deirdre that she would love being the big sister. It's great, she explained. I'll be able to go to bed a whole 15 minutes later because I'll be the older sister. You mean I'll be able to go to bed 15 minutes later than you? Deirdre asked cheerfully. Yes, Millie assured her. Dad, why does everyone call you Mr. Uchi? Percy asked as they all walked around Jack's new house. JJ, Shauna with her son Trey in her arms, Percy and his wife Addison, whose 8-month pregnant belly looked ready to burst, Penelope and her partner Alyssa, and Deirdre turned to hear the explanation. When I first saw Michelle, I called her Bubbles, Jack said. Bubbles? Alyssa asked, and Cupid's face crinkled into a smile. I don't know. She was so picky and chubby that it just slipped out, Jack admitted. And then I found out his middle name was Archibald, Michelle said, taking his hand. And he's a big Saints fan. Penelope nodded knowingly. Archie Manning is still the best quarterback the Saints ever had. JJ, Percy, and Penelope repeated what they had heard their whole lives. While Millie and Mandy showed their new older brothers and sisters the stakes, marking the spot where the puddle would be dug, Deirdre sat down next to her father. I'm sorry, Dad. I let it slip that you and Michelle are getting married next Saturday, Deirdre confessed. Honey, so what? I'm not hiding it from your mother, Jack shrugged. He smiled when Millie promised Shauna that she would teach Trey how to swim. Well, she's a little mad, Deirdre said. It's her own fault, Jack said. It's her own fault. The end. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.